A person who's not happy with where they are now spiritually. They either regret something they've done or they want more. They want to, what do they effectively want? They want something different. They want a different reality than what they have now. And to do that, you have to dream. To do that, you have to envision something else and believe that that something else is possible. Okay, friends, the story begins. We're diving into Tractate Brachos 14a. And our topic today is dreams, the importance of dreams, the value of dreams. What is a dream? Should we be dreaming about our preferred reality? Should we be focused on the reality at hand? We're going to unpack this unusual statement in the Talmud. I'll read it in the Hebrew and then I'll translate it. You guys are welcome to follow on along in the English or look at the Hebrew as well. Va'amar Rabbi Yonah, Amar Rabbi Zera. Rabbi Yonah said in the name of Rabbi Zera, Kol halan shivas yamim. Anybody who sleeps for 7 days. So 7 days go by if this person's sleeping. Baloy chaloim, and he doesn't have a dream. Nikra ra. This person is called bad or evil. Bad is probably more accurate. In English over here, they translate it as evil. Somebody goes and sleeps a 7-day period and does not have a dream in those 7 days, he's called bad. Shene'emar, as the verse says, and he quotes from the book of Proverbs, Visaveya Yalin, whoever is satiated when they sleep, Bal Yipaked Ra. They won't be visited by evil. Al Tikre Saveya. Rather than reading it as Saveya, which means satiated, Ella Sheva. You could read it Sheva, 7. 7 days go by of sleeping and you have a dream, you're not going to be visited by bad. This is what the Talmud says. The next paragraph says, Amar le Rav Acha, Bered Rabbi Chia bar Abba. Rav Acha, the son of Rabbi Chia, the son of Abba, said, Hachi Amar Rabbi Chia, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. This is what Rabbi Chia said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. So all these people are quoting the sage Rabbi Yochanan. Kol hamas bia atzmai midivrei Torah. Anybody who satiates themselves from words of Torah, velan, and then goes to sleep, ein mevasrim oisai besoireis ra'is. He won't have bad news announced. He won't be visited by evil. Shenemar, the same verse that we had quoted from Proverbs in the previous paragraph, V'saveya, he who is satiated, Yalin will sleep. He's satiated when he sleeps, meaning being satiated with Torah. Bal Yipaked Ra, bad will not, or evil will not visit him. So we have two statements from the Talmud. The first one, if you go by 7 days of sleeping and you don't have a dream, that's a bad thing. That person, that prototype is called bad. And anybody who satiates themselves with words of Torah, they're not going to be visited by bad. Means maybe they'll have a dream. Let's start with the first statement over here. That's a bit of a shocking statement for two reasons. Number one, what is so bad about not having a dream? Or conversely, what is so good about having a dream? If you have a dream, that's apparently a good thing. And if you don't have a dream, that's apparently a bad thing. That's number one. Number two, how many of you decided last night that you're having a dream? Right. It seems like to some degree it's out of our control, although we do have influence on our dreams, right? But to an extent, it kind of seems like it's a bit out of our control. The most basic interpretation of this Talmud, we're going to run through 4 or 5 different interpretations, which are going to give us different perspectives on what dreams are and how, frankly, how we approach life based on these perspectives. But the most basic perspective is that a dream has some element of prophecy to it, has some element of truth to it. That doesn't mean every dream you have is true. And even if it was true, that doesn't mean we know how to interpret it properly or accurately. But a dream is some level of communication. And it actually, we know this from the Tanya, from chapter 29 of Tanya. It says that when it quotes the famous statement in the Talmud that when one sleeps, their soul rises to heaven, a portion of their soul, and draws from heaven, and that is revealed in dreams. Because when we're having positive, sacred, holy dreams, that means our soul is drawing from the right place in heaven and recharging properly. And if not, it means it's not charging properly. So having a dream is some sort of prophecy. And that's a good thing, because if you have a good dream, that means you're being charged properly. And if you have a bad dream, at least you know that you're drawing from the wrong source. That's the most basic interpretation. One of the commentaries known as the Midrash Shloimeh explains that when it says 7 days go by and you don't have a dream, it doesn't mean you don't have any dream. The Talmud, the way he interprets this Talmud is that it's referring to a dream of substance. Somebody who has the 7 day period go by and does not have a dream of substance, a dream that's meaningful, that's considered to be bad. That's a bad indication. Why is that a bad indication? Because we have a lot more influence on our dreams than we think we do. Because a dream is very much reflective of what we were thinking about in the daytime throughout our day. So if a person does not have any dream of substance for an entire 7 day period, that means that a person is not investing themselves enough in thinking about things that are of substance. And here's the interesting thing: a person, that doesn't mean that a person didn't do anything of value for those 7 day period, or didn't even think anything substantial, but they weren't deep enough in thought of something that might be substantial. A person could have been davening and learning and doing mitzvahs and engaging in what they should have been engaging, yet didn't have a stream of substance. That means that what they were doing was not good enough until at that point. In other words, see a good dream as a barometer, and a positive dream, a holy dream, as a barometer of your engagement in spirituality. If a 7 day period goes by and we don't have any positive dreams, that means, doesn't mean we weren't engaged. It means we weren't engaged enough. Which is why the second paragraph that we had read today says, anybody who satiates themselves with words of Torah won't be visited by bad dreams, and conversely will have good. It doesn't say anybody who studies Torah. It says, and it's an interesting statement, anybody who satiates themselves with Torah. In English, I see over here, anybody who fills himself with matters of Torah. In the Hebrew, on that second paragraph, it's the third line, kol ha-masbia. Masbia means to satiate, to literally fill yourself up. You eat and you don't feel hangry afterwards. You don't feel hungry afterwards. You just, after you eat, after being hungry, it's like, oh, I needed that. Imagine we learned Torah with such a thirst and such interest. We were so inspired, and we felt like my soul needed that. I needed that. If we could get ourselves to that point, that's going to have an incredible impact on our dreams. Over the past couple of years, you guys know this, I've had this semi obsession, maybe interest, in reading letters penned by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, personal responsa, the Rebbe's Igros Kodesh, the volumes of letters that the Rebbe had written to people addressing personal issues. And I had recently come across a letter where the Rebbe was addressing somebody who had some sort of dream issue, was disturbed by their dreams. And the Rebbe was encouraging this person to do something different. Think about something else during the day, study Torah, and study immensely. Because that eventually, if we satiate ourselves with that, if we really ingest it, not just do it, we have to learn Torah, but sometimes we just do it. Sometimes we show up, which is good. It's always good just to show up. But if we can really ingest it, it becomes part of the way we think. And the greatest indication that we've ingested it properly is that it becomes part of the way we even dream. There's a commentary on the Ein Yaakov. The Ein Yaakov are like the selections of Talmud, such as what we're studying now, that are more the Agadita parts of Talmud, not the halacha parts of Talmud, more the metaphoric or philosophical parts of the Talmud, not as much as the halachic discussion. And there's a commentary on the Ein Yaakov called the Iyun Yaakov. The Iyun Yaakov explains that what a dream means in this context, somebody goes by 7 days and doesn't have a dream is called bad. A dream means a thought of teshuva, a reflection. Because what is teshuva? Teshuva is a desire for something different, something else than what we have now. A person who's not happy with where they are now spiritually, right? They either regret something they've done or they want more. They want to not repent. It's more than repent. Teshuva is more than repent. They want to return. They want to, what do they effectively want? They want something different. They want a different reality than what they have now. And to do that, you have to dream. To do that, you have to envision something else and believe that that something else is possible. And somebody who goes 7 days and has no thought of teshuva, that's problematic because they're too comfortable. Complacency. Every 7 days, which might be the significance of seven, by the way, because Shabbos is like the seventh day, and Shabbos, and we'll talk about this soon, but Shabbos is associated with teshuva. But that's what a dream is. A dream is I'm envisioning and imagining something different. And if I don't envision or imagine something different, even in my sleep, I'm not thinking hard enough. These are serious statements, by the way, because they really put a lot of responsibility on us to take responsibility for, you think like, okay, the day is over, I'm taking a break. I'm done for the night. And it's not true. There's no such thing. There's no such thing because we're in a relationship with God and we have a mission, we have a purpose, and we're trying to reflect that purpose every single moment of our lives to some degree, even while we're sleeping. I remember when I was in yeshiva years ago, the first day, the head rabbi was giving an orientation. It's old school rabbi, very old school. Like he was one of these Europeans, walks in there. I've told you about it. He walks in the room and he's, long black coat, white beard, and you feel his presence. He gets up at the podium and he says, here is, and it's yeshiva where we're dorming at, right? So we're kind of in this immersive environment. And he says, here is the schedule for you for a day at yeshiva. 24 hours a day. We're like, what? I mean, effectively, we started at 7:30 in the morning and ended at 10 o'clock at night. Why 24 hours a day? We're like, are we sleeping in here? Like, what? He said, within that 24-hour period, there's going to be a lot of time where you're going to be learning. There's going to be a lot of time where you'll be eating. There'll be time where you're sleeping. There'll be time where you might be exercising or doing other discretionary things that are necessary. There's times that are within the mandated schedule. There's times that are outside of the mandated schedule. And it's all one 24-hour period where you're learning how to serve God the best. Which is a powerful, he meant it. Right? That's what we're saying here, that we're responsible for our dreams. We're not off at night. But it takes planning ahead of time to be more intentional and more deep about what we choose to think about and invest in the day. In the 1700s, in Vilna, there was a famous rabbi known as the Gra. The Gra is an acronym, Gimel Reish Aleph. The Gra is an acronym for Gaon Reb Eliyahu. He's known as the Vilna Gaon. Gaon means a prodigy or a genius, and he was the prodigy or the genius of Vilna. He lived around the same time, maybe a generation earlier than the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya. And he has a lot of interesting insights on Talmud, on Shulchan Aruch, on the book of Mishlei, by the way, the book of Proverbs, where these verses are quoted from. There's a lot of interesting Kabbalistic insights. And he says that this dream at night that you would be having, you go 7 days without a dream, that's called bad, right? So he says, what is this really talking about? He says, night is a euphemism. Night is euphemistic for exile. And if we go 7 nights, we're traveling through exile, an entire week of exile, and we don't realize that this exile is a dream, we take it too seriously, that is problematic. That's a bad thing. That's what the Gra says. That's a bad thing. Because the truth is, Galus, exile, is a dream. Which by the way, I that may sound very insensitive. And I don't mean to sound insensitive. And I apologize if anybody's listening to this and says, well, that's because exile is very difficult. Galus is very difficult. And we know that. We know how difficult Galus and exile is. And we're not minimizing it by any means. Pain is real. People have really difficult situations. I mean, since October 7th, I think we've really been able to internalize globally as a people how difficult exile is, how badly we need redemption. But we associate dreams with things that aren't real and things that we would like prefer to happen, but don't actually believe it could happen. It's a dream. Right? So should we be dreaming for the final redemption? Should we be dreaming for Mashiach? No, it's not a dream. That's reality. Exile is the dream. The Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, writes, he doesn't write this in the Tanya, he writes this in one of his other works, that why is exile called a dream? But by the way, this is from the book of Tehillim, the book of Psalms. We say in the Shir HaMa'alos, right before benching, that when Mashiach comes, Hayinu kecholmim, we're going to realize that we were like dreamers this whole time. We lived in this exile that was like an illusion. It wasn't real. It's not to say that we don't actually feel pain and that people are going through a hard time, but it wasn't real. But why is it like a dream? It's an analogy. The analogy chosen to describe exile is a dream. And here's the reason why. What is a dream? In a dream, you could have this like dichotomy of reality that makes no sense. Right? You can be, I don't know, you open the door to the White House and you walk into Six Flags. I don't know. Dreams don't need to make sense. Dreams don't make sense. Dreams aren't expected to make sense. And there are certain realities that take place in exile that just don't make sense, that are unexplainable. Sometimes they're global atrocities. And we ask the question, why? And it's nobody dare answer that question, right? Because how could I justify such an evil thing? But let's say even spiritually in our own personal lives, there's things that seem to be dichotomous in our lives. We go to shul, we daven, we're inspired. And if you were to define that as me, you'd look at me in a certain light. And we leave shul, and maybe at work, I'm not inspired to the same degree. I'm not invested or as proud of my Judaism to the same degree. And if you were to isolate that portion of my life, you might look at me in a different light. So I'm giving an example of two opposite extremes where a person could daven and go to shul and learn and be inspired and be on fire. And in the same moment can turn around and is like, who is this person? In contemporary psychology, they call this versioning. There's different versions of people. And a person can have more than one version. I mean, we're used to calling this the animal soul and the divine soul duality. I'll give you an example. You have a story in the Talmud tractate of Avodah Zarah. This is Avodah Zarah 18. believe 18b, where there's the famous sage, Rabbi Hanina ben Tardion, who's visiting his colleague, Rabbi Yossi, who's on his deathbed. And Rabbi Hanina ben Tardion is an incredible scholar. He's an incredible Talmud Chacham. He has committed his life to Torah study. He's committed his life to teaching Torah to other Jewish people and lifting up other Jewish people, even in situations, even under circumstances where it was, I don't want to just say difficult, but illegal under the Roman Empire. He was one of the 10 martyrs that we read about on Yom Kippur. And he was killed for not only practicing his values publicly, but sharing them with other Jewish people who were less fortunate to have it. And before dying, he says, am I going to be going to Olam Haba? Am I going to be going to the world to come? Am I going to be going to paradise? Am I going to be going to heaven? And he says, well, tell me what you've done. What did you do with your life? What? He says, I'll tell you what I've done. I was collecting for a Purim meal, Purim Seuda. I had funds collecting for Purim. Those funds got mixed up with charity. And I knew I was able to be on top of the numbers. I knew what the numbers were. So it wasn't a big deal, right? You have a pile of cash for this fund, you have a pile of cash for this fund. Don't mix them. But if you do mix them, you know your numbers, you're good, right? But he said, I just gave it all to charity because I didn't want anybody to suspect me. I wanted to be sensitive to skeptical people, which is an irony of there, right? But okay. He said, you're going to the world to come. You're good. You're going to heaven. And the commentaries ask, like, what is this story? Why is he so inconfident about himself? The guy committed his life to Torah. He literally walked to death for the sake of God, to inspire Jewish people. And he has to come up with reasons why he might be going to heaven because of this whole charity incident. So one of the explanations is that he thought that maybe I'm engaged in Torah so passionately, not because it's Torah and because it's sacred and because it's divine and because it's God, but because it's interesting. He says, maybe I'm not that spiritual. Maybe I'm just an academic. And maybe I find it to be interesting. You can have philosophers and secular scholars who are just as committed to their causes. But the greatest indication that he's committed, that he's living a redemption life and not a galus exile life, is the consistency, not the dichotomy. Is that he's committed not only in areas of interest, such as the academics, but even areas of charity. Two very different areas, two very different prototypes who would normally be engaged in both of these things, two different personalities. Yet he's engaged in both. There's consistency there. He didn't have the exile mindset. He had the galus redemption mindset. Conversely, our default setting, and we have to work on this, and this is a work in progress, is we have the exile mindset, which is like a dream where there's dichotomies. Where one moment I might be inspired about this, and another moment I might be passionate about something that is antithetical to what I was inspired about before. And the Gra says if we go 7 days and we don't realize that this is just a dream, don't beat myself up. This isn't the reality. The reality is God's presence in this world. The reality is the spiritual consistency. That's not the dream. That's the reality. The exile is the dream. If we don't realize that, that's not a good thing. That's how the Gemara explains this. We have to choose the version of reality that is true, not just the one that is obvious. The version of reality that's obvious is the exile version, where one moment we're inspired, the next moment we've fallen flat on our face. and then feel guilty for falling flat on our face because I thought I was so inspired. That must be, which one is the real me, right? Is the version of me the one that fell in the face and the inspiration was the exception? Or was me being inspired the true version of me and me falling flat on my face, which happens, that's the exception. We have to choose and realize we have to choose the reality that is true, not just the one that's obvious. It's more obvious or easy to choose the exile reality as being true and saying redemption is a dream. One of those biblical prophecies, never going to happen. Right? That requires a mindset shift. We got to put on new glasses because that is the truth. The world is capable of experiencing that truth. The world has experienced that truth in the past. The world experienced this at Mount Sinai. The world experienced this at the splitting of the Red Sea. The world experienced this prior to Adam and Eve's sin. Right? God was comfortable in this world. The world experienced this with God being present at the Beis HaMikdash. And there's little Mashiach moments we have where we know that God is real. So the world is capable. It's just taking that, what seems like an exception, like a dream, and realizing that it's the exile that's the dream. It's the exile that's the exception. It just happens to be a prevalent exception, a prevailing exception. And it's the geula, it's the redemption that's real. Every 7-day period, we have to have this moment where we realize Galus is just, exile is just a dream. It's not the reality. I'm not saying that the pain is fake or that you don't feel it and that you shouldn't feel, but it's not the reality. And it could be that it's associated with Shabbos, the seventh day, because the word Shabbos means Shabbos. The Kabbalists explain that Shabbos has the same letters as the word Tashuv, which means to return, Teshuvah. In Shabbos, we live on a higher plane. We live on a higher level, a deeper, closer connection with God. I'd like to share with you one more explanation, one more interpretation from the Maggid of Mezrich, where he says this night period where one might be sleeping is analogous to laziness, to lethargy. There's times in our life where we feel demotivated. We feel disinterested in spirituality. We feel disinterested in engaging in our relationships, engaging in our connection with God. We feel like it's nighttime. And he says, you need at least every 7 days, the Talmud says you need to have a dream. What is a dream? So apparently, the word chalom, that's the Hebrew word for dream, chalomos, has another meaning. There's more than one meaning to that word. And those who are well versed in biblical Hebrew grammar will know this better than I do. But the word chalom, dream, has another meaning. You know what that is? Strength. Somebody who goes 7 days. Hold on, I'm just going back to the text here. Somebody who goes 7 days without a dream, not dream, without strength. So it's nighttime and we're sleeping, we're sleepish, we're lethargic. We feel disinterested in our relationships. We feel disinterested in our connection to God. And the easy thing to do is just say, do it anyways, bro. Just do it or don't do it. But both of those are not good choices. Because don't do it means we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Just do it is you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing because you're supposed to be doing it with joy and with simcha and with passion and with love. So either of those are not good options. So you know what you need? You need a chalom. The word chalom means dream, but the word chalom also means strength. We need strength. Where do we draw strength from? The answer is 7. Because what is the significance of 7? The 7 faculties of the soul, the 7 emotional faculties of the soul. The 7 emotional faculties of the soul that we learn about in Chassidus, and we learn about that Chassidus elaborates on, but we learn about in Kabbalah, which is passion, which is love, which is reverence, which is balance, perseverance, integrity and connection, communication. Right? That's the chesed The Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod Yisod, Malchus, the spiritual connection that we have, the capacity, the emotional, internal capacity we have to connect with God, when we employ that, when we try to trigger that, and by the way, that's literally what the Tanya is all about, is how do I trigger my feelings? How do I get my heart to buy in? I want my heart to buy in. How do I get my heart to buy in? And the Tanya provides numerous methodology for that. That's the 7. That takes strength. And when we're strong, because we make a decision that we're going to emotionally buy into what we actually believe in. When we make that decision, we're in a very good space in our life. We're in a very good space in our life. I was reading a talk from the Rebbe, by the way. I thought this was beautiful. It was the Lubavitch Rebbe's address to the Shluchim at the Kinus HaShluchim, at the Shluchim Convention, the Convention of International Convention of Chabad Rabbis. In 1991, the Rebbe was addressing the Shluchim. And the truth is, it's very obvious from this talk, because it was edited, made for public review, that the Rebbe was really addressing everybody. But he was highlighting the difference between a Eved, which means a servant, and a Shliach, a messenger. Are we servants of God, or are we messengers of God? And there's a profound difference between the two. What is a servant of God? Does what he's supposed to do, because that's what he's told. What is a shliach, an emissary or messenger? He has an opinion. He does what he's supposed to do in his own way. You can go to, I'm using Chabad as an example, but this is obviously globally relevant to every Jew. But you go to any of the 6,000 Chabad shluchim there are out there, and you're going to see the same message in 6,000 different ways. You're going to see a lot of personality. And the reason is because there's an opinion. We're not servants, we're shluchim, emissaries. And the difference is the emissary has bought in emotionally and engaged this personality, and doesn't just say, I'm going to do this because that's what I'm told. He says, I'm going to do this because I believe in this. And part of what I'm told to do is to believe in it, not just do it. He emotionally buys in. And the moment we emotionally buy into what we believe in, we're no longer living in this exile mindset, this nighttime mindset, but we don't go 7 days without the dream, without the strength. The moment we emotionally buy in like a shliach and not like a servant, you know what happens? Our Judaism becomes attractive and radiates and illuminates the world around us, illuminates our surroundings. Okay, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.